I have something to confess straight up. Even though I'm vegan, I'm not really an animal lover. I wish them no harm, of course. I just don't feel the need to, interact with them. Except all the cute dogs at the park. That's weird, right? A vegan who doesn't love animals. But I actually never thought I would be someone who would go vegan. Like most Aussies, I'd grown up with roast lamb on Sundays. We had fish and chips on the beach. And my dad's barbecue steak was better than any restaurant. Up until recently, there's no way I would have given any of that up. And I thought people who were vegan were missing out. I even have this memory of meeting two of my husband's friends for the first time. They're a couple where one of them's vegan and the other's not. And I remember saying to my husband, "I'm so glad neither of us is vegan." I just couldn't see how it would work for a couple. They wouldn't be able to go out to dinner and share each other's food, and that's one of my favourite hobbies. I also had the impression that all vegans were angry, radical, tried to force everyone, and had to go to protests. Plus, I had no desire to hang out with cows or chickens, so I didn't think I fit the vegan mould. But something changed my mind. I started learning the reasons why people choose to be vegan, and it's not just about animals. And I also learnt we don't need to be a perfect vegan to make a difference. For the first 35 years of my life, I had been eating the standard Western diet. Besides trying to be healthy, I'd never really thought about where my food came from, why I ate this animal and not another one, and what impact my choices had on the rest of the planet. Until I read this book, Why We Love Dogs, Eat Pigs, and Wear Cows. As a psychology student, I'm fascinated by human behaviour. This book explored the psychology behind why and how different cultures around the world have chosen certain animals to eat, but not others. Why we love our pet dogs, but turn a blind eye to the slaughter of the 80 billion animals we eat every year. I obviously knew animals needed to be killed if we wanted to eat them. I just thought it was normal, and as long as I didn't see it, that was okay. But there were some things I didn't know, like how cows need to have a baby to make milk, but then in most cases they have their babies taken away so we can have their milk instead. And when it comes to layer hens, baby male chickens are killed at 1 day old because they'll never give us eggs. That was the book that kickstarted my own research into this field. And I learnt some pretty shocking things. But what scared me the most was learning about the damage that the excessive production of animal foods is doing to our environment. As far back as 2006, nearly 20 years ago, the United Nations released a report stating that animal agriculture is one of the most significant contributors to climate change. It's one of our top carbon emitters after fossil fuels. And it's a leading driver that impacts all other aspects of our global system. Water pollution, ocean dead zones, freshwater use, biodiversity loss, deforestation. And I thought it was crazy how the land use is so lopsided. Worldwide, animals and their feed take up over 80% of all our farmland, yet they provide only 18% of our food. It's just not an efficient system. Knowing all this, I felt deeply compelled to do something. I can't stop climate change, but I can change my diet. I'm going to share with you, I didn't go vegan overnight, and I'm still not perfect at it. It's an ongoing journey. But remember, we don't need to be a perfect vegan to make a difference. So, day one of being an imperfect vegan, I looked for ways I could still eat meat, but in the most climate-friendly way. I wondered about organic and pasture-raised farms. I knew grass-fed beef was healthier, so I figured it must be better for the environment too, right? Well, not really. So the big study that stands out is from researchers at Oxford University. They looked at the environmental impacts of a whole lot of different foods, using data from nearly 40,000 farms across more than 100 countries. It's a very comprehensive study. And what they found was that overall, even the most sustainably farmed, best quality animal products still had more negative environmental impacts than most plant foods. So that wasn't going to work. All right then, what about eating local? I've heard about food miles. The less a food has to travel before it gets to me, the less carbon emissions it has. So buying beef from local farmers should be fine, right? Unfortunately, that didn't work either. When I looked at all the emissions from each item of food, I was surprised to see transport only makes up a tiny amount. On this image, we can hardly see those little pink bars that represent transport. The majority of a food's emissions come from how it's produced, and animal foods just have a bigger impact in production than plant foods. So no matter how far away my veggies come from, they're still going to be better for the environment than local meats. At this point, I was starting to feel a bit overwhelmed and disappointed that I couldn't find a good argument to keep eating meat. So I stopped. I wanted to do my bit to help the planet. And I realized that as individuals, we actually have a lot of personal power. Sure, companies producing these foods have a social responsibility to reduce their emissions and minimize harm, but there's only so far they can go. There's just no getting around the inefficiency of the vast amounts of food, water, and land that goes into keeping animals alive until we eat them. Instead, whenever we choose what to buy at the shops or order at a restaurant, we have the power to make a positive impact on our planet. We don't need to be a perfect vegan to make a difference, but changing what goes on our plate is the quickest and easiest thing we can do as individuals with the biggest return on investment. When we switch from a standard Western diet to a plant-based diet, we reduce our food-related emissions by 70%. This means you're doing more for the environment than washing with cold water and recycling and upgrading light bulbs, all put together. Even if you went plant-based for only 1 day a week, over a year, you'd save around 212,000 litres of water. That's a big random number, so I'll put it in context. If you used it for drinking water, it would last you 290 years. Okay, so it definitely seems better for the environment to eat plants. But then I thought, what about my body? I want to be healthy. Aren't vegan diets missing vital nutrients? Thankfully, here's where I learned some good news. Studies from around the world are showing that a whole foods, plant-based diet is also the healthiest diet for our bodies. Not a junk food vegan, unfortunately. We can't be healthy on Oreos and French fries. They may be delicious, but we've actually got to eat real food, like fruits, veggies, and whole grains. And all the major dietetics associations have statements saying that a well-planned vegan diet is suitable for all stages of life. It takes a little bit of planning, but once we've cut out meat, dairy, and eggs, there are no nutrients we're missing if we're replacing them with a balanced, whole foods, plant-based diet. Now, this is not a nutrition lecture, but let me just address protein, because I know that's what some of us are thinking, right? Protein was the first thing I was worried about when I made the switch, but I was actually surprised at how simple it is. Protein comes from beans and lentils, tofu, whole grains, nuts and seeds. So when I make a big pot of chili, I use beans instead of mince. In a shepherd's pie, it's lentils instead of lamb. And in my lunch wrap, it's tofu instead of chicken. And I sprinkle seeds all over my salads. I honestly love all these delicious and healthy plant foods, and I'm going to keep eating them. But I'm still not a perfect vegan. And I thought I'd better give you an example. When my husband buys hot cooked chicken, he doesn't eat the wings because he says they're too fattening. So I eat the wings. Otherwise, they'd end up in the bin and create food waste. And I do still like the taste, even though I don't buy them myself anymore. I do avoid animal products most of the time, but I don't claim to be perfect. We don't need to be a perfect vegan to make a difference. And it's not even possible for everyone. Around the world, there's cultures and communities who really do rely on animal products to survive. Even in modern Western countries, not everyone has access to the same nutritious plant foods. And people with food allergies can't always eat what they want. So if you do have the ability to choose what you eat, choosing plant-based foods is a no-brainer. I would go so far as to say it's a responsibility. This is something we can do daily to help the planet, just like carrying around our own water bottle, turning off the tap when we brush our teeth, and switching the lights off when we leave the room. It's simple, easy, and makes a difference. When I first learned about the global impacts of our food choices, not to mention the truth about what really happens to animals, I did want to be a perfect vegan. I tried to do everything, but I put a lot of pressure on myself and I started to burn out. It really is easier to just be normal and eat like everyone else. But it doesn't need to be all or nothing. Around this time, a friend said something to me that really helped take the pressure off, and it even inspired the book I wrote. She said, "The world doesn't need 100 perfect vegans. The world needs billions of people doing the best they can." And she's totally right. Being vegan shouldn't be an exclusive club for perfectionists. A handful of perfect vegans, no matter how enthusiastic they are, aren't going to save the world. But everybody being as plant-based as possible is going to make a huge difference. That's why I wrote The Imperfect Vegan, to encourage a lot of people to be a little more plant-based. Globally, we need to reduce meat consumption. The science is clear on this. The United Nations has been saying this for 20 years. But rather than trying to force people to go fully vegan, we get better results when we encourage and appreciate the good they do, even if they're not perfect. So here's my invitation for you. Now that you know more about what's happening on our planet and the power you have every time you choose what to eat, I'm inviting you to start thinking about the ways you can be a little more plant-based. It's not about doing everything. It's about doing something. You don't need to be a perfect vegan to make a difference. Replacing dairy milk with oat milk, choosing the chickpea curry instead of the chicken one, or trying out an Impossible burger. These are all really simple swaps that have a positive impact on our planet. And while it might not seem like one meal choice is a big deal, we have the opportunity to make that choice 3 times a day. So if billions of people are doing the best they can with regular small choices, it adds up to a world of difference. So, the question is, what's for dinner?